That's a good question. I can only draw on my own personal experiences, but that's a resounding yes for me. A lot of it's built on a false, I don't know if it's false, but it seems like it lacks an authenticity, and that always needs to be a room filled with love and excitement and miracles.
To the world at large, the church often comes across as lacking authenticity. I think for many in the world, they recognise that the church is supposed to be the community or the organisation of faith that follows Jesus, who was known as the man who went around eating with sinners and accepting those around him with love unconditionally, the man who laid down his life for people. And I don't see much of that reflected in the church that I've been a part of. I don't see Jesus clearly, and in fact the Jesus that I saw was a very distorted image that led to death rather than life.
I think yes, the church does lack authenticity, mostly. I think it's too easy for them just to follow a model and mix amongst themselves.
It looks authentic when you are under 10 years old. It looks great. You are celebrating Jesus Christ, you are celebrating with the flowers to Virgin Mary. It looks beautiful, like little Jesus when he's born, the three wise kings and so on. It looks so authentic because they picture it with the parables and everything is like listening to like fairy tales, okay? Which helps a lot to follow the model of Jesus Christ, and that's great. Little by little, when you start growing older and your hormones start like jumping around, it stops feeling that authentic because there's some things that they don't tell you about.
Being up all the time, it's not authentic for me. And I've seen plenty of examples of when it hasn't been true, when people have put a face on and it lacks authenticity. But that's human nature. But I would agree with that statement fairly well, wholeheartedly.
I think it's authentic when you want to see it as a Disney movie, but it's not that authentic, and it's not updated at all. So that's why when you are in your a teenager, you stop feeling understood by the church.
In my experience, have I found the church to be self-centered? Yes. But I also have experienced a few churches that weren't.
I think in many areas the church can be very self-centered, and I think it's easy sometimes for the church to feel as though they are doing something by coming together and meeting on a Sunday perhaps for a service, but in fact not doing very much. I think often the church, from my experience, looks very much inward at its own comforts, its own people, its own suffering, and that's all a part of it. That's all really important. But if you don't have an external focus outwards as well, if you're not prepared to engage with people who are on the fringes and who are not from your background or not like you or not from your circumstances and who don't perhaps go through the ordinary, everyday, middle-class struggles of being a white Australian, then the church is not fulfilling its job.
Yes, I believe that wholeheartedly. And again, I come back to it being self-perpetuating. It's an organisation that wants to continue for what, and that's not. I don't mean that in a bad way. You know, in the main, it's trying to help people, but in its narrowness, in that if you don't follow the path, you fall by the wayside and you get forgotten about. It's very, very self-centered, and when you have discussions at Bible studies and youth groups, and it's all me, you know, I feel this way and I feel that way, and you know, this is the way I feel about issue X, and this is the way I feel about how so-and-so is behaving, and you know, I think that level of self-reflection or external reflection is very, very self-centered. I mean, do you really need an audience for how you feel about everything that happens? Do you need a public audience? And that's where the judgment comes into it, because everything's discussed in groups ad nauseum. How do you feel about what happened here? How do you feel about what happened there? Well, everyone's got feelings about it, but does it need a public audience? And a lot of times it doesn't. So I'm feeling that, yeah, that's very, very self-centered. And a lot of the people, particularly in the Anglican and Pentecostal circles that I swam in early on, it's very true. And seeing some of those people now, I just think, you know, it hasn't. I think nothing's changed for them. I wish they'd take the blinkers off and give them some perspective, because there's a big world out there.
It was, yes, it was for God, and it was for Jesus, and it was because I was told to, and it was because my friends went to church as well. So it's more like a society meeting, really. It's like going to a country club, okay? That's back in Spain. I'm not sure how it works here, but that's back in Spain, especially in summer. Mass at 7 p.m. That was the country club meeting. Parents, grandparents, children, us.